Welcome to Wines We Drink, a podcast for wine lovers and learners. I'm Charlotte Norsworthy Varnum, and together with my counterpart Keith Herndon, we'll be exploring a new wine each week. Keith is a lover of wine, and I'm a learner of wine, and we hope you'll sip along with us. Hello, welcome to our show, everyone. You have found the Wines We Drink podcast, and we are so excited to have you along for this season's 6th episode. We're at the midpoint of season 6, and we have a great show planned. I'm Charlotte Varnum, and as always, I'm joined by my co-host and certified wine sommelier, Keith Herndon.
Charlotte, yes, we have reached the midpoint of another season 6, and you're correct. I mean, what a great show we have in store for our listeners. I'm excited about our midpoint.
Yes, a midpoint 6 and 6. And we've established a tradition on Wines We Drink that our loyal listeners already know about. We tend to celebrate the 6th episode, the halfway point, and what we call our case of episodes, with a bottle of bubbly. Are you ready for some bubbly, Keith?
I'm always ready for some bubbly, right? You know how much I love to hear that sound of the cork popping for the bottle,
Yes.
Delicious sparkling wine. Today, we have a selection that may surprise some of our listeners. Yes, the British are coming. Right? We're popping the cork on a sparkling wine from Great Britain. East Sussex, to be a bit more precise on that. And while this may ruffle some feathers of the traditionalists, I'll say up front that today's bottle of bubbly is worthy of any rival right now coming out of France's Champagne region.
Whoa.
At a comparable price point, I might add.
Oh my gosh.
Okay.
This midpoint episode is a hot take episode. Last season, we celebrated with an actual bottle of champagne. But before that, we've had an eclectic mix of sparkling wines on our show. We featured a French Cremant, 2 versions from Napa Valley, one from New Mexico that allowed us to talk about that wonderful day when we both visited the Gruet Winery outside of Albuquerque.
So, if you'd like to check out any of those wines, and there are some great wines in that list, you'll find those episodes or any of our previous episodes on all of the major podcast platforms. We also have a complete episode guide at wineswedrink.com. So just like the episode that featured sparkling wine from New Mexico, I'll admit that the locale that we're highlighting today is a bit different.
Yeah, I'll say. So let's dive into that. Why are we about to open a bottle of bubbly from Britain?
Right. Well, the short answer is that it's amazingly good.
Of course.
But I think you're asking about, Britain itself, right?
Yeah. I mean, how has Britain come to be known for its sparkling wine even? What got it on the map?
Well, there's really one big explanation for this. It's climate change. The rapid rise and success of British sparkling wine is heavily driven by changing temperatures, right? Climate change. This phenomena has transformed southern England's once marginal climate into one ideal for producing high-quality grapes that's just right for sparkling wine. Temperatures have warmed nearly 2 degrees Fahrenheit since the 1990s, and that's just enough to allow for better ripening of Chardonnay and Pinot Noir. It's really now, if you can believe this, mirroring the climate of France's Champagne region 30 to 50 years ago.
Wow. I mean, that is so fascinating that the shift in temperature has led to so much better wine from the region. I mean, that's a silver lining.
Yeah. Well, the south of England has always had a nutrient-poor soil similar to that of the Champagne region. That type of soil is ideal for high-quality, vibrant, sparkling wine grapes. So now the region has a climate to match the soil, and it didn't take long for the vintners there to catch on. The number of vineyards has nearly tripled over the past 2 decades.
Wow. Okay, well, this is so interesting to see just how fast this region has developed. So before we get into the actual bottle of sparkling wine that we're featuring today, can we circle back to your annual lesson on the differences between champagne and sparkling wine?
We have to do this every year, don't we?
We
right?
have to.
Yeah, but it's an easy lesson, right? The term champagne is only allowed to be used by sparkling wines produced in the Champagne region of France. The producers there actively regulate the use of the term champagne. As we know, that doesn't mean other regions around the world can't produce, quality sparkling wine using the traditional champagne method, but they can't call it champagne. That's why in other parts of France we get Cremant.
Mm-hmm.
In Spain, it's Cava. In Germany, it's Sect. In South Africa, it's Cape Classique. In many other places like Britain and the US, it's simply labeled sparkling wine.
That's so true. So let's continue the tutorial a bit and explain what you mean by the traditional champagne method.
Sure. An initial fermentation begins in the tanks, but the bubbles are created through a secondary fermentation that takes place inside the bottle, right? The winemakers add a mixture of yeast and sugar, initiating this second fermentation. They then capture the carbon dioxide gas inside the bottle, which creates a lot of pressure. I mean, it can be up to 90 pounds per square inch. A non-vintage champagne must be aged for 15 months in its bottle and spend at least 12 months in contact with the lees, which are the dead yeast cells from the fermentation. They settle at the bottom of the bottle. But through a process known as riddling, the bottles are gradually tilted and rotated to remove the lees down to the neck of the bottle. The neck is then frozen, and the ice plug containing the lees is expelled, removing the sediment, which is called disgorging.
Okay. So there's a lot more to it than just it being made in this region. And so that blob of dead yeast, it's removed from the bottle entirely.
Yes, exactly. And that leads to the next step. A small amount of wine and sugar, which is called the dosage, is added to refill the bottle and adjust the sweetness level. Right? Then we move to the last step. When the bottle is sealed with a larger cork than you'd find in a still bottle of wine, and then the cork is secured with a wire cage. Remember all that pressure.
Mm-hmm.
You have to contain it or the bottle could explode.
It's almost like you're putting it in jail. Okay, well, thanks, Keith. That's a great explanation of the traditional champagne method. And now, in keeping with our tradition, I will repeat the mantra. All champagnes are sparkling wines, but not all sparkling wines are champagne.
You nailed that about 3 seasons ago, yes. I think, but it never hurts to repeat the mantra.
I have it actually tattooed on the inside of my hand. Just
right.
kidding. So let's get into today's bottle. Can you tell our listeners about the bottle that we're featuring today?
Well, there were several to choose from. I mean, more than several, actually. But I landed on Henner's Brut. It's received excellent reviews in the wine magazines, but I featured it at an event at Tapped Athens Wine Tasting Market last fall, and it was an absolute winner. The customers just couldn't stop talking about it. Mm-hmm. So when I saw firsthand how it had received such an immediate positive reaction, I knew it had to be our sparkling wine for season 6.
You already mentioned this is a Brut sparkling wine, which puts it in the dry wine category. So this one has about 7 grams of residual sugar, which is at the lowest end of the Brut scale. You can get drier with an extra Brut, but this is pleasingly dry enough for me right before we get to the extra.
Yeah, so today's bottle is also a non-vintage release, which means that the juice used to make this wine is a blend of recent harvest. It contains 40% Chardonnay, 35% Pinot Noir, and 25% Pinot Meunier. These are all the classic grapes that can be used in the champagne method. But the winemakers tell us that the varieties are fermented separately and are only blended together in the bottle after that first fermentation.
This wine is really showing off the artisanship that we've come to expect from the classic sparkling wines of Europe. But Henner's is a newbie to the market compared to those kind of centuries-old labels that they find themselves competing against.
Yes, I mean, this may be hard for some traditionalists to believe, but Henner's was only founded in 2007.
Wow.
But they picked the right place. It's in the picturesque village of Herstmonceux, and the vineyards are nestled next to the Pevensey Levels Nature Reserve, which is less than 5 miles from the sea. It's one of the driest, sunniest pockets of England, and it benefits from its coastal influence. Those sea breezes are a key to Henner's success by minimizing frost risk, reducing the disease pressure, if you will, from the mildew, and they help bring that crisp salinity to the wine's finish.
Wow. That has been such a great setup for today's bottle, especially exploring a region that we've spent very little time in, at least certainly I have, exploring this space. So I think it's time now that we pop the cork and sample today's sparkler.
Well, Charlotte, I'm going to get the cage off of this bottle. I've already taken the foil off, right? Let me get the cage off. And then, because there's so much pressure, I'm one of those people that like to open the bottle of sparkling wine under a wine towel,
Yeah.
because I need to
Wow.
make sure that it doesn't hit somebody in the face, right?
I know, yes.
That's a really nice
sound. Thank you
sound.
for avoiding that.
Right.
But what a great sound always. I mean, that is the beginning of the celebration, if you will.
Absolutely. So our midpoint celebration allow me to pour. And, sometimes it's controversial with traditionalists about what glass you use for sparkling wine.
Mm-hmm.
I am a sucker for flutes. I don't care what people say. I really enjoy looking at that mousse, as it pours into the glass. And then you've got the nice, the flute allows the long escalation of the bubbles. I just think that that's kind of the classic celebration.
Absolutely. Yes. And like you were saying, this one has quite the mousse on it. We can see how those bubbles are just bubbling right on up. And as you're pouring too, I'm also immediately drawn to this color. It's a beautiful, bright, light lemon color. Yeah,
it has a nice, yellow hue, right? And those are some lively, persistent bubbles, that are there. So if you can keep those bubbles from tickling your nose too much, let's talk about the aromas from this wine.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, the way I described the color ended up being a dead giveaway for that first aroma that you pick up. Lemon citrus, zest. There's very noticeable apple notes, I would say, too, as well.
All right. And I'm going to describe something that I think is a little bit interesting here. I think it's like candy on the nose.
Oh, yeah.
I'm going to describe that as butterscotch.
Ooh, yes.
Right? There's some, right?
Something warm there, yeah.
Yeah, very pleasing. Yeah. Very pleasing on the nose. Let's go in for that first sip.
Let's do it. Cheers.
Cheers. Happy 6th.
Happy 6th.
Right. 6 in 6.
6 in 6. Oh, wow. And what a great celebratory selection. That is such a good first sip. This wine is just so good. It never disappoints. It's classy. It's creamy. Those bubbles just keep on coming.
I mean, you mentioned creamy, and that goes hand in hand with the opulence of the bready brioche, right?
Yeah.
After all, this wine aged on its lees, the yeast sediment, for 48 months. Mm-hmm. That contributes to a long, just like a cereal-like finish, right?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, you do get on those aromas, too, some of that yeast, some of that baked note there, too. And before the finish, which does have that salinity that you were talking about earlier with being 5 miles away from the sea, I think you also are getting more and more stone fruit there. I think it's, we were talking about specificity on last week's episode, so green apple and pear notes, I think are complementing that breadiness. It's like a little bread pudding or something. It's like, and then there's crustiness, maybe a fruit pie.
Oh, that's a good way of describing it. Yes, what a nice wine for our midpoint celebration, right? Especially when you consider the value proposition that we're getting here.
Okay, do tell, because we had a fun time with our splurge last season on champagne, but at about $100, our selection really caused a little sticker shock for some of our listeners. We're not quite that high, are we, on this one?
No, not at all. I mean, not even close, actually. I paid $42 for our bottle today, and Vivino lists the national average price at $45.
Okay. For a wine of this quality and for a celebration wine, I feel like that's a great price point.
Yeah, I mentioned earlier that magazine reviewers really like this wine. Decanter magazine, which is a British, magazine, awarded it 93 points, and Wine Enthusiast gave it 94 points.
Wow.
The consumer ratings on the Vivino app gave it 4 out of 5 stars and placed it among the top 5% of all wines in the world.
Featuring a British bubbly at your next gathering can certainly be a conversation starter. Even more so, though, when you explain that it's among the top 5% wines in the world. What a shock.
I know. Talking about featuring this wine at your next gathering, right, means it's time for you to start shifting into Chef Charlotte mode.
Yep.
And let our listeners in on your ideas for pairing this wonderful wine with cheese and food. I mean, we're going to get to that right after the break.
Yes, and spoiler alert, we're not going to overthink this one, okay? So please join us back here in just a few minutes.
Welcome back to our podcast, Wines We Drink. We are in our 6th episode in season 6. It's the midpoint of our season, and we're celebrating with a delicious bottle of British bubbly. There's some alliteration there, right? A bottle of British bubbly. Now we're at the point where in the show where my co-host has assumed her alter ego as Chef Charlotte, and she's going to wow you with her culinary skills today as she pairs this wine with cheese and a main entree to show you how to experience this wine amplified by the right food.
Absolutely. Thank you, Keith. And as I mentioned before the break, I have not overthought today's pairings. Even though we have a beautiful celebration wine here, to me, this was probably some of the most natural pairings that I chose for today. And so when Keith and I were putting together the wine list for this season, we decided to go with the Henner sparkling wine. It was immediately obvious what we were going to do today. Today's pairings would be the simplest of any this season.
Okay, so let's go with the cheese pairing first. What is the simple cheese that you have paired for this wine?
Okay, a familiar favorite, an aged English cheddar. So we've got the British bubbly, so let's go back to that regional pairing concept. So both our wine and this cheese are high quality English products, and their flavor profiles actually work really well together.
Oh, wow. Okay, so let's share some bubbly and aged English cheddar.
Yes,
right.
Absolutely. So I've got on here some of this aged cheddar on crackers. So let's go ahead and grab us a cracker and some of this good cheese here.
Yes, absolutely.
And we'll take a bite. And just like some of our earlier wines, you need to look for the wine's acid to kind of cut through some of the fat of the cheese.
Oh my goodness.
Mm-hmm.
The sharp, savory cheese with its high fat content, oh my gosh, is countered by the high acidity found in this Henner's Brut. I'll have another sip here.
And I'm joining you here on that. And you were talking about the wine's acidity there. That is one thing certainly working in its favor. But another is the lively bubbles, that carbonation. They help wash your mouth, really cleansing that palate, making it feel refreshed and ready for that next savory bite. You know, I also am really loving the saltiness of this cheese too, because I feel like that salinity I was mentioning earlier is also really well complemented.
Right, absolutely. Well, this is a great complementary pairing. Those citrus notes, those apple notes, those brioche notes enhance the nutty savoriness of the cheese, right? I mean, I just love some aged cheddar anyway.
Me too.
Right? So it's just a great regional wine and cheese pairing, right?
Absolutely.
It's unbelievable. I have to have some more bites here before we move on to the next course.
Yes, yes. And what I like about this too is this is a cheese that is so accessible. You can find it pretty much anywhere and try out different kinds, but it's also going to be a fan favorite.
Right? Oh, wow. When you removed your dish from the oven during the break, I was overcome by the savory smell.
Yes, so this dish is rich. We are featuring a nicely roasted Cornish hen that I've bathed in a garlic butter sauce and a squeeze of lemon juice. Welcome to what I am calling my classic British Sunday roast dinner.
Oh, wow. I mean, that familiar aroma of a roasting chicken, it certainly speaks to comfort food, right?
Yes.
But why does this classic British Sunday roast dinner work with our wine selection?
This Henner's Brut has a high kind of bracing acidity, and those lively bubbles really cleanse the palate and cut through the fat of the butter and of the skin on the chicken. And so it's the same concept, right, that underpins the cheese pairing. Remember, we're not overthinking it today.
Well, please allow me to slice us some of this chicken, this Cornish hen, so that we can enjoy this classic meal.
Absolutely. Right. Please do.
Yes.
And as we are getting some of this Cornish hen here on this plate, I want you to focus kind of on some of these textures that we've got going on here. As you're focusing on that first bite,
Yes.
So Henner's Brute is aged on lees for 48 months, giving it that brioche, that Lisi character that adds some complexity to it. We were smelling it, we were tasting it. These notes really complement what I feel is a savory, caramelized flavor, roasted flavor of the garlic and the chicken skin. So as we're having some first bites here, be pondering on that.
This may be a classic dish, but your preparation here has made it feel contemporary in a way that is befitting of a winery that's only been around for 19 years, right? So how do you take a tried and true concept like a roasted Cornish hen and make it feel like a modern dish?
Right, yeah. I mean, going with the classic feeling here, I think the first approach that I had with taking what feels like a rather involved meal, a traditional Sunday roast dinner, a classic British tradition, I just wanted to make it more accessible. And so that's why I chose to use Cornish game hens as our bird for the dish rather than roasting a whole chicken, which feels kind of like an ordeal. Plus, the Cornish hen actually is a breed of chicken that's originally from Cornwall, England. So we're actually right on the money. We're right on brand today with this unique selection. So despite the name, though, the Cornish hen is not a wild game bird, but it's a specific young domesticated chicken. Okay. And so it's smaller in nature, easier to handle. It doesn't require all this heavy lifting and cleaning, and it doesn't require all this, weeks-long defrosting like you're thinking of here in America when it's Thanksgiving and time to prep a turkey. So you could also, in theory, do roast chicken quarters as an alternative for this recipe. But what I really love is the sweetness. Some more in the background. Yes, we can hear that good fizz. But I really love the sweetness that comes from a Cornish hen. And I find that they stay incredibly moist when you roast them whole. Plus, they still produce that wow factor, right? When you pull it out of the oven, it's an impressive sight to see, just in a smaller format.
I smelled it today.
Right. And so, adding to that, the preparation, I think, is also where I had a modern approach. I prepared the chicken with some fresh flavor combinations that I think bring just enough to add some zest to what's otherwise just a traditional roast chicken dish.
Well, Charlotte, last week, our fish and white Burgundy, that Chardonnay, transported me to a quaint restaurant on a Burgundy hillside, right? Today, your dish has me sitting in an East Sussex farmhouse.
Right? Yes, nice.
So today's pairing, I think, is testament to the power of place that we can create with just the right combination of food and wine. I
agree. And even though I've kept the pairing process simple and not overthought this week, that doesn't mean that we aren't enjoying a complex array of flavors, something that still feels special and celebratory. As we've discussed, this wine has distinct tasting notes of lemon, citrus, orchard fruit like apples. These flavors mirror and enhance the lemon and garlic notes in the roast chicken. And I think it produces a harmonious result, a new favorite word of ours. And so I think it's a tasty pairing.
A tasty pairing indeed. I mean, so let's go in and share some more details about the recipe itself.
Yeah. Okay. So this recipe in particular features the traditional complementary flavors of what we think of the poultry seasonings, right? So thyme and sage, but I've paired it with a bright punch of lemon and orange. I've brought in those apples as well, snuck in some sneaky Dijon mustard in there to bring some balance to the richness. And that brings that old school tradition into the modern age. So the roast chicken actually roasted on top of apples paired with some sweet potato and carrots. And so because of their size, these Cornish hens cook much faster than a several pound bird. And so this cooked up all in one big pot and pan, actually technically just one cast iron skillet in about an hour. You can even spatchcock it, so kind of split it apart and toss it on the grill if you want for faster cooking and crispier skin and another modern take on a roast dinner.
Well, I think our listeners will find this is a recipe they can readily conquer at home. I'm certainly going to add this to my list of things to try. Well, that brings this week's segment with Chef Charlotte to an end. But we're going to do it again next week, right?
Yes, absolutely. So while this Sunday roast dinner is concluding, next week's episode, we're moving into this season's red wine selections. We are crossing the threshold here at the midway point. Keith is going to regale us with more stories from his wine journeys through France and start our red wine episodes with an exceptional Gamay inspired by his visit to the Beaujolais.
The beautiful Beaujolais. It was such a relaxing visit there. I'm sure that was mostly due to the glorious Gamay.
And so enough with all those alliterations, if you will. Beautiful Beaujolais. What was it? A bottle of British bubbly.
Glorious Gamay.
Glorious Gamay. Okay, we can't stop. But for now, I think it's time to sign off with our final alliteration of wines we drink. Until next week, everyone. Cheers.
Cheers, everyone.
Thanks for listening to Wines We Drink. Listen to our other episodes anywhere you get your podcasts, and be sure to follow us on Instagram at The Wines We Drink, and check out our episode guides at wineswedrink.com. Cheers.